So we got a lot to cover. I have a novel, I've written a novelization of my experiences, but we're going to touch on the nature of reality. I've touched on it any number of times on this channel, but, right, in the beginning, there was darkness, right, and the world was void and without form, right? So, Plato's allegory of the cave alleges that a life that is lived without the lens of philosophy is perceived as though chained inside of a cave, and all of the things that you see are shadows cast upon the wall of the cave, right? From a fire illuminated out of sight behind you. And when the adept liberates himself from the shackles of his ignorance and comes out of the cave, right, and sees the world for what it is, sees the true reality, right? When he descends back down into his cave, the cave where his brothers and sisters all live, and he says, "Oh no, this isn't the way, this isn't the truth, this isn't the life," right? They all say, "Oh, how unfortunate, he's lost his mind," right? Wisdom appears as madness to the uninitiated. So I say a number of things. I have a number of tenets as far as my worldview, right? That Platonic forms, right, is the true philosophy, right? It is infallible. It is the philosophy of Walter Russell as well. That all of life emerges as a psychic reflex, as a mental concept from the realm of idea, which always remains as idea, right? The idea of a tree is never the tree, right? Right? All things exist in a twofold manifold, right? That embedded within every cubic centimeter of space, however big, however small, all stratas, all convocations, right, is a conscious field, a conscious resonance, which is not a creature, it has no personality, right? It is a thing. It is not no thing, right? Commonly referred to as deity, as God, right? Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, right? Embedded within that, right, it's a twofold manifold, is the structural skeleton for all of manifested life, which is an infinite complex of nested polyhedra. This is one example. My celestial vision board behind me is a myriad of other examples. All of these things are all nested inside of each other, right? And it's through the breathing of the conscious field, right? If I take this into my hand and I explain, right, that the conscious awareness seeks to express the dignity of this, though through transgression, corrupting it through motion into a shadow of what its idealized form is. And so it exerts pressure upon it, right? And the specific angle or angles, angels or angels, right? The dihedral of the expression of the conscious field upon this infinitely dense complex of quantum waveform probability electric potential, right, is a reflection of what it projects out as a corpuscular manifested shadow, right? So if we close this compound of 40 tetrahedra in a sphere, right, and we say, I cast a circle around it, and say, oh, that's a great circle, right? Each of those each great circle, which there's an infinite complex of, right, represents a degree of the Almighty's love exerting pressure upon the subatomic structural scaffolding, right? That this is how everything comes into the world, right? So, what does this have to do with science, right? What does this have to do with physics, the standard model, right? In the Big Bang model of creation, scientists all say, they're all in agreement here, that within 1/100 millionth of a second, right, the four primary stabilizing forces in creation emerge, which are the strong and weak nuclear force, right? relativity, quantum mechanics, and electromagnetism, right? So strong and weak is one thing, right? Relativity, quantum mechanics, electromagnetism, right? So if we take this painting here that I have here, right, and we say, okay, four principal powers, exponential, one squared is 1, 2 squared is 4, 1/100 millionth of a second. Okay. So this painting, right, has 10 circles inside of one circle. And it's referred to in certain circles as the Gra arrangement, as the original tree of life, or the 10 Sephiroth tree of the tree of life. Right? And it's inherently obvious this must be the first expression of it, right? Because it's one circle, right? And so, right, if we say, okay, all things are an emanation from a divine intellectual origin, right? Within 1/100 millionth of a second, we have these 4 principal powers in nature, right? So what is it? What do they say in the Sefer Yetzirah, right? The Book of Formation, right? The 32 paths of wisdom, right? 10 Sephiroth out of nothing, right? 22 foundational letters, right? So if we take the first 3 Sephiroth of the Tree of Life, the first 3 emanations of deity, God the Father, with Ein Sof being above it, right? Pure abstraction, right? And we say Kether, Chokmah, Binah, right? Crown, wisdom, and understanding, right? And through the 2 of them, right, they coagulate to create Dath, intellection, right? Which is not a Sephiroth, it's a Sephirah. It's an emergence of through the 2, right? It's not from God directly, right? So we have the pillar of mercy, we have the pillar of severity, right? If we take this painting and we deconstruct it just a little bit, right? All of the yellow that you see here, these are not like arbitrary lines on this painting, right? So this painting, right, has a circumference in blue, right? And it's divided into 12, right? 12 ages of the zodiac, right? And so each of these yellow lines is an arc that's cast over each of these 10 circles, right? Not over and under, just over, without any going inside of the 10, right? And so it's worth pointing out, right, if we're looking at this thing, right, that if you divide a circle, right, and so what I'm saying right now, right, is that, and I mentioned this in other videos, right, that the structure of the Hebrew alphabet, right, as well as the 10 emanations of the Almighty, right, derive from Moses, from these wise Kabbalistic rabbi men, right, dissecting the subdivision of the circle, right? This is unequivocal, right? This logic is infallible, right? It's flawless, and it's not in any of the books, right? And so what do I mean when I say that? That when you divide a circle, right, it goes 1, right, 10 Sephiroth out of nothing, right? A circle is the ultimate expression, symbol of nothing, right? 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, etc., etc., right? And so, if you divide a circle into 2, then you have nothing, right? But you can't put anything else in it, right? It's only when you divide it into 4 that you can have 3 below it, 3 above it, right? Right? And so what is that? What is that? Right, the four primary principal powers, 1/100 millionth of a second, right? Electromagnetism, quantum mechanics, relativity, right? And if you do 8, right, if you do the next one, right, and you have 8 running down here, and you have 7 on one side, 7 on the other, that's 22. 7 plus 7 is 14, plus 8 is 22. 10 Sephiroth out of nothing, 22 foundational letters, the 32 paths of wisdom. Right? So what the fuck am I talking about right now, right? So what I'm saying, right, is that we're all saying the same thing, right? David Berlinski mentions, though I despise him now, in his late masterwork, Science After Babel, that there is a guy, his name's Albertus Magnus, and I've read some of his stuff. He's a very sage, wise man, very close to God, right? But he's considering, right? He's considering what's like a, oh gosh, like a, an angel has a thought, right? And he wants to tell another angel what the thought is, but like the one angel's in Rome and the other one's in England. And so how do they, gosh, I don't know, So, and then it hits him like, oh, an angel has a thought. And in that exact instant, every other angel has the same thought. Right? My point is that we're all saying the same thing. Right? That Albertus Magnus was discussing quantum entanglement in the 13th century. Right? That the 10 Sephiroth of the Kabbalah, right? The 10 emanations of deity, right? Begin, right? Their descent out of Ein Sof, like all the way to Malkuth Dominion, right? Through, right? The 4 principal powers that operate the universe in physics, right? That it's all the same thing, that we're all saying the same thing, right? That life has an intellectual origin, right? That God the Father is an abstract intellectual notion which exists perpetually in a state of rest, right? All throughout every cubic centimeter of space, right? And he exerts his knowing upon the quantum manifold of electric probability potential as pressure, which mutates the static perfection of the hologram, right, into a corpuscular, physical, measurable shadow, right? This resolves the trouble with measurement. Oh gosh, like what is light? Like how does it work? It's like when we're looking at it, it's like a photon, but when we're not looking at it, it's smeared out everywhere, right? You get it? Right? What does this have to do with Quentin Tarantino? Right? All instances of clairvoyance, right? Telepathy, psychokinesis, thaumaturgy, remote viewing, is the mind of the adept tapping into the non-locality of the conscious field which permeates all of space. And through quantum entanglement, right, the psychic aperture is opened, right? And the adept is allowed to see disparate locales through harmonizing, right, the atomic structure of their brain, right, with the atomic structure of the locale or person they seek to observe, vivify, or destroy. Right? So, that's what's been occurring. Nothing else has ever been occurring forever.